Brandon Nimmo is becoming now a sustained problem for this team. And we say it every single show. We love Brandon Nimmo. He obviously is a guy that, is a great ambassador for this team. But if you go back to the second half of last year, Joe, we are dangerously inching towards a full season sample size now, where we're going to have the second half of last year and the first half of this year, where Brandon Nimmo is nowhere near the player that not only is he paid and expected to be, but it's just kind of inexplicable to me. Even if you want to get away from that 2020 to 2021 stretch where his on base percentage was over 400, and as it was in 2018, if you want to go more recent and look at 2022 to 2023, both those seasons where he was 363 and 367, he's at 277 right now, Brandon Nimmo. And that's what's led to a sub 700 OPS, is that Nimmo is not getting on base. And Nimmo is not producing with runners in scoring position when he is consistently batted in a slot that you need to drive runners in when guys are getting on in front of you. Because we say this all the time, even when Soto, by his standards, is slumping, Soto gets on base. Pete is in a very bizarre home run drought by his standards, but Pete naturally is going to bounce out of that. And Lindor is the starter for this team. And when he's not getting on base to kick off the game, you see the difference in the team. But these guys naturally, even at their lowest, are going to find ways to get on base. Vientos is a young player, but he's got to get going. But at some point, the clock it's going to get, late early, and the Mets are going to have to try someone else in that slot. And we'll have a larger conversation probably later in the show about Ronnie Mauricio and Syracuse, obviously the return of Jeff McNeil, the ups and downs of Francisco Alvarez. But the bottom line is, Joe, you can really only continue to do this same thing with the same results for so long. I don't think the Mets would go into July with this same problem in the lineup.
I can't imagine so either. And Brandon Nimmo is definitely the guy that I'm looking at. And, we're going to talk about all the Juan Soto stuff. And as you said, Juan Soto has been good. He just hasn't been game-changing, which is what we expect. Francisco Lindor, been great. The last week hasn't been so good. Pete Alonso, home run drought, as you mentioned. Those are guys that you kind of know are going to turn it around. And we're getting closer, as you said, to that 1 year sample of Brandon Nimmo becoming a completely different player than he was. And I know some of this is approach that the Mets have pushed his direction. But look, there's always those games where, we're always texting throughout every single game. And it's just like, those were a couple good at-bats from Nimmo. Those were a couple vintage at-bats from Nimmo. And then just kind of reverts back. And he's still hitting the ball hard. So you like to think at some point in time it's going to start to fall his way. But I want to see the Brandon Nimmo, as you see if you're watching on YouTube, a 277 on base percentage. I want to sign up for 100 points higher than that.
Right.
If you give me 70 points higher than that, we're at least getting in the right direction. I want Brandon Nimmo to find a way to balance the two. It seems like it's a tale of two players. As you said, like the 2019 through 2021 version of Brandon Nimmo is just focus on getting on base, walk, get on base, set the table for the guys behind you. He is now in a position in the lineup where he does need to produce more. That's just the nature of hitting cleanup or fifth in the order. Can we take a little bit of the 2019 to 2021 Brandon Nimmo and mix it in with this Brandon Nimmo that hits the ball hard? And, there is some bad luck involved to a degree, like the double play that he ground into in game one in Boston. Hit that on the nose. There was only one defender on the left side. He just happened to be right where the ball went. But there needs to be a lot more from Brandon Nimmo. There's no way around it. And we are at the point, as we both have said now, that we're getting to a sample size where we wonder, are we going to be able to get back to the Brandon Nimmo we knew?
And these aren't excuses, but the problem with my previous point is saying like, hey, you might have to try something else eventually.
Yeah.
Maybe
what
not
is there
now.
to try?
Jesse Winker being hurt is a big problem of that, because in theory, you'd probably just slot up Winker in that spot, and maybe you reconfigure your lineup much differently in that scenario where it's Winker where Nimmo's hitting, and then Vientos, obviously, for the balance. And then maybe you're even talking about McNeil and then Nimmo. Like you're putting Nimmo in towards the bottom of the lineup to try to get back to that ability to He's probably going to be leading off more innings. He's probably going to be trying to set the table. It's, this could just be a fundamental disagreement between us and the Mets. And obviously this was a big combo, Joe, when you were out and we had Gelbs on the podcast. To me, Brandon Nimmo of 2022, where he only hit 16 home runs, but he hit 274 and got on base at a 367 clip, that's an 800 OPS. Sign me up for that all day, rather than the Brandon Nimmo who, for some reason, needs that extra 7 to 8 home runs, but the batting average drops 50 to 70 points, and the on base drops. I don't think he's going to finish the season with a 277 on base clip, but are we talking about him going under the 327 mark, career low he had last year? It's dangerously looking that way unless things drastically change.